Shut up and sit down.
I am a radical libertarian.
And we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You deserve better.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
You just take an issue that's important to you and do something.
There you go.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
Because no one brings tear gas to a gunfight.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future. The one, the only.
Fight for liberty. This is the cherry on top.
This is FSM.
Hello, fighters. Welcome back to the Fight for Liberty Live. I'm your host, David Fite, here to get you fired up about the men and women out here making the world a freer place through politics, activism, business, and more. And we are here live on the Free Speech Media Network. And if you're watching this on one of the old platforms like YouTube or Facebook, make sure you click the link in the description. Go on over to Rumble. They pay their creators better, and they're less likely to shut us down for spreading the truth. And if you're already over there on Rumble or Odyssey or one of those cool platforms, just give yourself a little homeschooler high five like that. And we love you for it. We really appreciate it. Definitely go on over. Let's get rid of these YouTube views. I love getting the views on YouTube, but I'd love them more on a different platform. So move on over there. But tonight I am joined by a recent add to the Students for Liberty team, Jess Mears, who is a great friend and a great person. But first, we're going to hear just a little bit about a few of our sponsors. First up, because they're on every stream, Blood of Tyrants Wine. If you are looking for a nice night in, while also sipping on the blood of your enemies and helping take down the tyrannical state, look no further than Blood of Tyrants Wine. You can go on over to that website, and they have a nice Merlot red wine. They have a Pinot Grigio white wine. They also have an like energy tea. It's got about 100 milligrams of caffeine in a nice little can of tea. That's really good for getting you going. That's called Liquid Freedom. So definitely go on over, check out Blood of Tyrants. Use the promo code FSM to get 10% off and help support the show and the channel and everything. But without further ado, joining the fight tonight, former staffer for the Libertarian National Party and Americans for Prosperity, manager of sponsors and membership. Wow, sorry. I'm reading all sorts of wrong. Manager of sponsors and memberships for Students for Liberty, and one of my all-time favorite people in the whole movement, the lovely Jess Mears. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, David.
My eyes did a thing and went up the line, and I almost read out LP National twice, and I was like, that's not right. Let's go back. What did I do? Well, again, welcome to the show. It has been a while, and you have bounced around a little bit since we last talked, because I don't think we've talked since before you joined AFP. So tell me a little bit about life. How has it been? Since then you've become a mom, a wife, and a Texan. Yeah. So yeah, like you're a completely different person than I interviewed last time.
Absolutely. So yeah, the last few years of life, I know you and I have been chatting a lot on Clubhouse from time to time. And something that was kind of big in my life in 2021 was the Clubhouse app. And I met my now husband. We have a kid. My husband is a Canadian citizen. So I have a baby that is 6 months old and she's half Canadian. And my husband moved to Texas from Canada for his job. And so I relocated out here from the DC area to live with him in Houston until we find wherever our permanent home is going to be.
Nice. And your daughter is absolutely adorable, may I just add.
Thank you.
The baby pictures are so great to see.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's quite a bit of change.
Yeah.
So let's go. I'm just gonna dive straight into Students for Liberty stuff.
Okay.
Tell me what exactly a manager of sponsors and members does.
So I just came on the team with Students for Liberty this month. So it is kind of a little bit of a whirlwind, but we have LibertyCon International in Washington, D.C., February 2nd to the 4th. So that's coming up really soon. And they needed somebody to wrangle in all the sponsors and bring in last minute sponsors and exhibitors and manage the ones that were already committed. So that's kind of my job right now, is getting us prepped for LibertyCon. So if any organizations that are watching the show want to be represented at LibertyCon, there's going to be 500 to 1,000 people in attendance. Majority of the people that make it out are going to be liberty lovers or liberty curious individuals. It's really a philosophical kind of organization. So people that come out can expect to listen to talks and do a lot of networking. And I think that's the real value add in going to a conference like LibertyCon, is to be around like-minded people and to see what else is out there. And like, for example, I, for a long time in my life, didn't know about occupational licensing. And I had been a libertarian for maybe a decade before I learned about the issue of occupational licensing. And then I learned about it, and now I understand why occupational licensing reform can really benefit Americans and improve the economy and job outlook. And there's going to be a talk on occupational licensing at LibertyCon. So it's really a great way to expand people's minds, open them up to ideas they may not have heard about yet, and maybe make some new friends while they're at it.
Hell yeah. It's funny. Occupational licensing is one of the issues that brought me to the party and to the philosophy, was experiencing that as an apolitical person and going, this is really dumb. And then finding out that there's a whole group of people that agreed with me on that. I like that you said it's kind of like more of a philosophical organization. And from like, I've unfortunately never been to a LibertyCon, but I have been to a few YALCons and PorkFest now and a couple of other things. And from what I've heard, the big difference between, just as an organization, SFL and a lot of the other stuff, is that they are more about the actual like education, not as much about the boots on the ground stuff, which like for the last few years I don't care about like the institutes and the think tanks and screw that. I'm going to work with YAL. I'm going to work with other organizations that are going to like fly me around the country and make me like do stuff. But as I've done that and just interacted with a bunch of people that just kind of got thrown into the front lines of something without any clue of what they're actually talking about or doing, there definitely needs to be the other side of this, where we're actually instructing teaching students liberty, not just how to message liberty or how to do liberty, but what it even is as a concept and how to understand libertarianism. And that, I think, is kind of lacking in a lot of ways, which is weird because it's almost all we do is preach to the choir once you're all the way in. But there's that lacking from the newbies, I think, of like actually really educating.
Yeah, and I think that conferences really give people a purpose to come out, because otherwise, why would like a whole congregation of libertarians like in the 700 figure range get together and just enjoy each other's company? So I think that's a huge benefit of just organizations hosting these conferences, is giving people this opportunity to see what's going on in the movement. And it's always changing. What's a hot button issue at one time is going to be different than another. So we'll be like, I think this LibertyCon is probably going to show a really good pulse on what's going on with the movement. It's been a hot second since I've been out at a conference, and the liberty movement has rapidly changed in the last couple years. And so where it's going is kind of, in my opinion, a pretty big question mark. So I think we're going to be seeing a forecast at this LibertyCon, and the people that are on the ground are going to be kind of in the know.
Yeah, I don't think that enough can be said for actually like showing up in person and meeting people like face to face and interacting with them. Even if you don't care about a career in this, if you're not like a podcaster or an influencer or anything like that, you don't want to work on a campaign, you don't want to work for any of these organizations, and the networking aspect of it isn't like quite that, it's still important to put actual faces to names, put real life interactions, behind you with these people that you are friends with on the internet, and actually make it like a real friendship. Like you and I were online acquaintances for years, and then we finally met up at a few events and like actually got to hang out. And then I think Clubhouse is really what like solidified it. But still, like without YalCon, you introduced me to like 9-10 people at that YalCon that I owe a bunch of guests to just people you've connected me with at different events.
And on the flip side of the opportunity to network, there's also the opportunity to be able to like sit and get and listen. And there are speakers at this LibertyCon that are people that I wouldn't mind walking in their footsteps, like John Mackey, the founder and former CEO of Whole Foods. My husband is a huge granola crunchy dude, and we eat organic food. Our grocery bills are insane. And he got a chance at the last LibertyCon to talk to John Mackey for just a few minutes. And it was like, he was so excited. So there are opportunities, kind of whatever your interest is. There's going to be like many different kinds of speakers and internet influencers, journalists, politicians, former politicians. There's a really wide variety of the people that are going to be featured. And then something that's going to be cool for me is John Stossel is going to be the MC for the awards banquet. And I've never been at an event with John Stossel before. I've never met John Stossel. So I'm kind of excited for, despite that I've gone to like dozens of Liberty type of conferences, there's still something new for this one.
That's pretty cool. John is one of my absolute favorites. He's the first like libertarian that I ever actually knew of by the like the moniker of libertarian. So yeah, that one's gonna be fun. I definitely, to your point of just how many people have kind of already done some of the stuff that a lot of people our age are trying to do, and maybe not the same way or not exactly the same, but to your point of just like walking in their shoes in the future, there's a bunch of people that have spoken at these kinds of things that I'm like, I can just be like half of who you are. Like the amount of times that I've got, anytime I'm at an event that Matt Kebby is speaking, I am in the audience of his talk, because anything that I can do, anything like what Matt Kibbe did or is doing, and with all of the stuff, and like if I can find a wife as awesome as Terry, that would be great. Like like any tiny amount of information he has for me, right? Oh my gosh, I was at PorkFest this year. Matt Kibbe got put on a panel that was absolutely ridiculous. It was run by Brian McWilliams and John Odermatt. And it was those two, Reed Coverdale and Matt Kibbe, and they were just reading this ridiculousness. And Matt actually just like tapped out. He was like, "I'm done with this. I'm not doing this anymore." And I just yelled from the audience, like, "Put the better Kibbe in!" And so they actually did. They swapped, and Terry sat in the panel for the rest of it, and she was great.
Wow.
But definitely couple goals for sure. So tell me a few more details. How do people, before I forget, like how do people sign up? Where is it? When tell me, when is it again?
So February 2nd to the 4th, Washington, D.C. at the Grand Hyatt. And if you want to sponsor LibertyCon, you can email sponsorships at studentsforliberty.org. And the tickets are on libertycon.org. And David, I know that your podcast and media organization has a special discount code to offer to your listeners. So I'm going to ask you to share that in just a moment, but I have some kind of important information that there is going to be a price hike coming very soon. And the deadline for getting a discounted room at the Grand Hyatt, it's $199 a night. But that ends January 10th. So it is a time to hustle to get planning and get registered and get your accommodations booked and also save money. So, David, what is that discount code for registrations?
That is going to be FSM for Free Speech Media, as with most of the coupon codes. And there is a link in the description, guys, to go straight to that registration link as well.
Cool.
Awesome. I'm still not 100% sure that I will be there, but I am very, very excited about everything that's going on. And I've been on and off the phone with Brian Lambrecht for months about just different things, because he likes to rant to me about the various things that are going wrong in his life. So most of the things I've heard about this have been in the frame of a complaint, but it's still really exciting stuff because like this one super awesome, amazing person, its travel is being shittier, you know, like whatever the complaint is of the day, it's still based in, I'm talking to all of these awesome people. I know we're like, there's obviously nothing confirmed, but even just the idea of Malay coming is kind of,
oh my goodness,
awesome.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of information on that. I can't give any confirmations at this point in time if Argentina's newly inaugurated president will be speaking at LibertyCon, but the indications that I am aware of are, one, he wore on the campaign trail the Students for Liberty lapel pin on his jacket, and SFL has been sharing that video of him describing what that pin is and what it represents to him on their Twitter account. So that's pretty cool to see that like this president of a country has been representing Students for Liberty on the campaign trail. And then a second little tidbit is that he has called a special session of the Argentinian Congress, and they are going to be in session until January 31st. And SFL's LibertyCon starts February 2nd. So I don't know. I'm not in the know yet, but I know the request is out there to have him be a speaker at LibertyCon. We will be making space for him if he is available and willing to come to the United States, to DC, to address the audience. And I think this would be a really cool way to ignite the liberty movement in the United States, is having President Javier come in and just give a speech. He's like a very impassioned dynamo when he's speaking, and it's in Spanish, so I don't always understand it, and I can't, like, not all of the videos that I'm seeing of him have subtitles, but if we can get him, maybe get a translator, it will be really awesome. And since LibertyCon is an international organization, I think it'd be really cool to have a speech from President Javier in Spanish at LibertyCon's convention. That would just be pretty cool for a lot of people to be able to see this happen. It's kind of like giving me the goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's one of the things that's really cool about SFL is just the ridiculous size of it, and it being such a gigantic international organization that has the kind of ties for Javier to have been a member for as long as he has, you know, like, and to, you know, there's kind of like a little bit of I mean, obviously they didn't do that as an organization, but there's just like that kind of little bit of like, hey, that's one of our people that just like became the first libertarian president ever. That's, I don't know, that's really encouraging to me. I think that as much as I love this ilk in the liberty movement, I think there's sometimes too much patriotism and nationalism unintentionally within the liberty movement, and we kind of forget how nice it would be to see Canada or Mexico or France or somewhere else free too. Would be cool.
Yeah, like this is the perfect time for me to be working with Students for Liberty when the market signals are showing us like liberty at an international scale is really what's working right now. I've been very apathetic about liberty in the United States for a while, and I know there's plenty of places to find joy of like raise rainbows and joy and everything. But I've just kind of tuned out of politics myself. I don't know what bills are moving through Congress. I don't watch the news anymore. I check Twitter maybe once a day just to see what's trending in case there's anything wild, like trains exploding in Ohio or something. Like I'm, trying to just keep up with what are the big news stories. But there's like a lot of hope in the international space. And something really cool about Students for Liberty is there are like 70 to 90 people on staff. And so when I'm going into meetings, I don't know where somebody is located, and I'm kind of meeting with people at random times of the day, and we have these conversations like, where do you live, and where do you live? And there's people all around the world, at any given hour of the day, doing work on behalf of Students for Liberty. And then when it comes to the activation that SFL has been doing, they had over 150 people, 150,000 people at their events in the last year. And like that's 150,000 people. That's a huge number. It's really hard for, I think, most liberty organizations to mobilize that kind of people. And here's the kicker, keep track of it. Like they were able to keep tabs on all the effort that has been expended. So I'm really impressed with SFL, with all the work that they're doing. And it's super heartwarming for me, and especially that space with students. Like I remember my time as a campus organizer. I founded a libertarian club on my campus in 2007, and SFL was founded in like 2008. So I didn't know about SFL back then, but I was a campus organizer. And that was some of my like best experiences as a college student. We hosted a range day, and our campus life fees paid for ammo. And we had NRA instructors volunteer to do a range day with us. So we did that a few times. And I know campuses have changed a lot. So I'm kind of wondering if it might be possible for other student groups to get their colleges to fund ammo for range days. I know things have changed. So I lived in Ohio, and when we did this, so it was a state that maybe was more permissive to being able to have their college students go for range day. But that's this kind of stuff we used to do. And we hosted a drug war series. We hosted a presidential candidate. It was Bob Barr back in 2008. So these were some awesome experiences for me. And that's where I really learned how to do grassroots organizing, was at the college campus level. So it really changed my life and set me up for a career in the liberty movement to do this at a professional level. And so that's something amazing about Students for Liberty, is we're setting up these college students for these amazing opportunities to get leadership experience, to organize, and where they're going to go with that experience later on is going to benefit liberty on a national scale.
Amen. I couldn't agree more. I think that there's an undoubted truth that like college as a whole has shifted drastically left, both economically and socially. And I feel like most people in the country are just whining about that. And then there's like 4 organizations, even like including TPUSA as a good thing for the first time ever. I've never given them credit on a show before. But like there's like 4 organizations that are actually like, hey, why don't we try to stop that and actually educate the students instead of just hoping that we can get to them at 45 like everyone else did. So yeah, it's very, because like if you can get to somebody before they learn all the stupid shit, it's so much better. Like I never went through that indoctrination process. I went to a Christian college that pushed me further right, and then I bucked all of that as a whole and became like an atheist anarchist. But I just watched so many of my friends go through that thing where, you know, for 4 years you're told all of these adults know everything, you know nothing, just believe everything you're told, and then all of them are just saying a bunch of ridiculous statist bullshit arguing for the legitimacy of military and taxes and all of these other things. And you're just like, okay, yeah, they know how the world works. I'm supposed to be learning how the world works from them. So if you can't get in there at like somewhere between 16 and 21 and actually stop that, I feel like it's so much harder to turn like a 30-year-old into a libertarian.
Yeah, and it seems like the ROI on college just really isn't there for what a lot of people are studying. Like, I got a communication and public relations degree, and reading textbooks and watching YouTube videos and like real life experience would have gotten me further ahead than my time in college. Although I had a great time in college, I got a lot of leadership opportunities. But it's interesting how, like, I think there's starting to be a larger sentiment that college isn't necessary. And when I grew up, neither of my parents had bachelor's degrees. So I was kind of shoved down my mouth that I would go to college. And like, this was just my parents. There was no question about it. Like, they told me I was going to go to college and that was what I was going to do. And I think it was because they didn't get that opportunity. So they thought they saw their friends with degrees getting promotions or getting ahead. And I think that kind of life isn't there for people today as it was for my parents' generation.
Yeah. Yeah, and it'll be even less there for kids who are in college right now when they're even our age, like I'm not that far out of college, but I feel like even the like late 20s, early 30-year-olds that I know, like still applying for stuff, they still ask for, a bachelor's degree for a job that really doesn't need it. I think on that end, on like the actual employer side of things, will probably change within the next decade, so that the kids who are in high school now will barely need it unless they're trying to be like a doctor or a lawyer or something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like there's a chance we get to a place where there's like, iTunes University takes over some of that. They actually become an accredited college, and then you can just sit there on your phone and actually get a degree. That would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
I love that. Have you ever used iTunes University?
I haven't. Like, I'm familiar with the Khan Academy, but I did not know iTunes University was a thing.
It's just like a bunch of other like actual schools courses. A lot of them have either audio or video like of the classes on there too, but it's just the syllabus and the textbook and the videos of like a Stanford law class, and you can just sit there and watch an entire semester's worth of a Stanford law like intro to criminal law class or something like that. It's very obviously like it's not, you don't get any credit for it. There's no tracking system within the app at all. Like, they don't even pretend to like give you awards or anything like that. It's just the content, but it's really interesting content because it's good colleges that like normal people wouldn't have access to even if they were going to go back to college. I'm not going to get a Columbia education. I'm still going to end up at a state school or something.
Something my husband and I are considering doing is, rather than send our daughter off to college, is we have this ambition to have multiple businesses and gift a business to our child when she's an adult, and then she can decide whether she wants to keep the business or sell it. So that's kind of what we're trying to set ourselves up for. I currently don't own any businesses, but I plan to.
Fair enough. You're actually the third person I've heard mention that exact concept, but only within the last month, and I heard it for the first time like last month. And I really like it. It seemed like it's so much cooler than even just like a savings bond or a CD or a savings account or something like that. It's so much more tangible. And my one friend that like brought it up to me, she's like actively working on two different projects, one for her son and one for her daughter, and they're like, I think 5 and 9, somewhere around that. So they're actually like participating in it.
Cool.
The one with her daughter is like a book series that she's writing, and she's actually my friend's a pretty creative, like a decent so I'm excited to see what kind of books they come up with. But her daughter's like actually helping her with this, and it's all from the perspective of their pet hamster, which is her daughter's hamster. And so it's just like this thing that they're doing together, and get them published. And if these books, even if they don't take off, even couple hundred sales a year for the rest of her life, that can be something, and be something that's sustainable. And yeah, it's just like a really, really cool concept that I had not heard of or thought of, but now I definitely want to do for my kids too.
Yeah. And I think it gives kids the opportunity to learn how to fail and enjoy the challenge, and kind of like get that understanding of how failure is a good thing. And so my goal is to have businesses and have my child involved with them and have her learn how to do business management as she is maturing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's
so I have
important.
to get started. Do you want to hear what I have ideas on?
Please.
Okay, so nothing really like here that like I need to have NDAs signed for these ideas, but I want to get involved in farmers markets and vend and sell prepared food at farmers markets. My thought after like doing like 12 farmers market tours is that farmers markets really aren't like real markets by farmers. There might be some farmers there, but the majority of it is artisans and food prep people selling things like bread, soap, oils. And I think there's a huge need in these farmers markets for people to come out and be able to eat something prepared there on site. So like here in Texas, breakfast tacos are a thing, and there's regional preferences, but farmers markets are community events. People come, talk to one another, support local businesses. I think this is a really good space for libertarians to participate in. It's like community building, and a lot of them are ran by communities or by local chambers of commerce. And another thing that has been on my mind to get into for business is dog boarding. In COVID era, everybody went out and got a pet to have at home with them. So dog ownership has risen significantly, and people really want to have their loved pets in a safe place that's affordable when they need to leave and travel. And I've been traveling a lot. I've spent too much money on dog boarding and doggy sitters, like so much money, and it is a really lucrative business. So those are a couple places where I think it's tangible to like get started. Like, I mean, maybe I might not have a dog boarding business at this very second, but something I can do to take one little step to get there is to board dogs on Rover or walk dogs on Rover. So there's ways to like make little steps to get to being a business owner that I'm looking forward to doing. I just haven't yet. So I guess it's that whole thing of like get started and it'll go from there.
Yeah.
So I need to like turn on the mindset of like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and it like starts right now.
Yeah. It's definitely a switch that and a kind of self kick in the pants that I feel like is necessary. Shameless plug, because this episode and all other episodes of the show is sponsored by Craft and Business and Financial Services. If you guys are trying to start a business and you don't really know how, or you want some help going through all the paperwork or a marketing plan or the accounting or any of that stuff, go on over to crafton.us and sign up, and they will help you out with that kind of stuff.
That's a perfect sponsorship for the moment.
Right? They actually technically are, like, the link isn't in the description for this episode because it was just Blood of Tyrants and then the SFL stuff for the next few episodes. But I was like, this is too perfect. I have to throw up the slide and do the promo anyway. Yeah, I think like this as a concept is really cool, and I kind of wish that my parents had done this.
Yeah.
Because growing up, my parents actually did have a business, like a side hustle kind of thing that they did together. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad had like a normal full-time job, but they also had like a computer repair and information technology company that they started before I was born, that apparently before the kids was at least a little bit of something, but for most of my life was just my dad fixing like my friends' parents or his friends or my mom's friends' computers for usually just barely above cost. It was cost plus like the gas it took to get there and stuff. He was really just doing favors. And there was years where I remember like basically begging them to let me take over the marketing of this company. I was like, I can do something. Like 12, 13-year-old David was like, we could be doing so much more with this. And I think at that point they just did, like, my dad didn't want to grow the business. He has a nice job. He makes 6 figures. He's happy with what he does. And so they just didn't want it to grow, and they didn't want it to be something that it wasn't. But I did, and I was like gung ho about trying to like do something at that age that I think, I feel like my dad could have fairly easily at that age taught me enough to where I could at least be marketing the types of services that I could do. And have kind of taken it in that direction and maybe stuck with computers, because I used to actually be able to build computers. Now I don't even know what I'm doing. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's a like peak of creativity between like 10 and 15 for most kids that could really be like really strong entrepreneurial energy if it's given the right focus. But instead, for most people, it just becomes, the cartoons that they drew that they don't care about anymore or something like that. And it's just like completely wasted time for their careers and their lives, instead of like a really big stepping stone into what they did with the rest of their life.
Yeah.
I
spent my childhood watching TV.
Yeah, most of my creativity was spent on who I was pretending to fight in the backyard. Even up until that age, I did that kind of shit.
You could have grown up to be Joe Rogan if you had the right energy put into that.
My parents would have had to have not been terrified of anything that could have gotten me hurt. They didn't. I did flag football, and then they made me stop playing sports once it became tackle football. And then I tried to get into like mixed martial arts when I was maybe like 12, 13, somewhere in there. And I did a couple of classes, but they were like, no, we're not spending hundreds of dollars on something you're either going to quit or get hurt doing. One of the two. Like, it's inevitable that it's one of the two. So no. But it's something that I'd like to get into now. Actually, it's like a big goal.
Of like you fighting or other people fighting? Okay.
At least like training. I don't think that I would want to like compete professionally or anything like that, but I definitely want to start doing jiu-jitsu for sure.
Yeah, karate is awesome. I have some injuries from doing karate, so there's always that risk.
See, that's what my parents were talking about. See?
Yeah.
I guess there's elements to it that are accurate. So I had, to go back to LibertyCon real quick, I had an interesting observation said to me, I think it was just yesterday, and I don't want to put you in like a bad spot or like make you talk about drama or anything like that too much, but one of my friends pointed out that there are a lot of the ex-LP, like, hardcore people that, like, kind of rage quit or left loudly, who are really fired up about SFL and LibertyCon. And I'm curious if you have any, because technically, I mean, you're also part of that category, as am I. you didn't like loudly rage quit, but you're also
Yeah.
like not involved with the party anymore. I'm curious if you have any more insight to the overlap there, or why you think that there might be so much energy directed at this organization specifically when there's kind of a lot to choose from when you leave the LP.
Yeah. I feel like the whole like announcing on social media that someone is done with the Libertarian Party is like, it's so tired, because I've seen so
Right.
many people be like, I'm rage quitting. And then they're kind of like, never mind, I'm back. And so I have really not paid attention to who is considering themselves as a person who is actually active in the LP. I don't know who are the leaders. Like I know only a couple of the national party officers. State party wise, I'm totally unfamiliar. Like when I kind of checked out, I just decided like I'm phasing out of electoral politics for now. That was a season of my life that I was in, and I'm discovering what's next. And so I'm not really sure like who else would be like ex Libertarian Party, because I don't even know like who is involved with the party in leadership. And I know like the presidential candidates, I know who some of them are. But it's very much like when I decided to take a break, like I lost track of who's doing what.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little lost.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think some of the people that this person might have been talking about are, you know, like yourself, do just work for them, because I know for a fact that Eagle has to be part of that comment, because he in my like from my experience has been the loudest about LibertyCon for a reason, right? It's it's part of his job to be
He's
super
the marketing
loud.
director.
Yeah. And I think he's doing a great job. I actually I was in a Twitter space yesterday and went on like a 5-minute rant because people were trying to say that Eagle was a like paid Democratic plant, and I was like, listen guys, I've met this man. If they're paying him, they're not paying him enough. I've seen his house. Like, you know, like, come on, this is an honest, decent dude. Like, fuck off. And like really went off on like an entire Twitter space yesterday for somebody who I ironically still have muted because he annoys me.
Well, the people that are actual plants don't really make themselves known. Like I've had Democratic Party operative friends who are like, yeah, I went to that event. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, why did you go? And they're like, because we do opposition research. But like they don't make themselves known, they just keep tabs.
Yeah, I have no doubts that there are a few Republicans, a few Democrats, and a few Feds in leadership positions in the party, and definitely in membership. But just some of the accusations that get thrown out as to who those people are is just annoying to me. Especially when you don't know the person, it's just their online presence that annoys you. It's a really bad thing to judge someone off of. But yeah, I don't know.
And I'm not even sure if Josh is still involved with the Libertarian Party and the Tennessee Party. Like I'm not certain about his affiliations.
I think officially he is no longer affiliated in any way. Because he was a member of like part of the leadership for the Classical Liberal Caucus, but I believe he just resigned, not because of any issues with them, but for a like conflict of legality issues. One of his other jobs is you can't officially work with a party type political job. I don't know which one it is, but he's doing a couple of different things right now, and there can't be too much crossover. Which I think is always a fun little thing that we have to deal with in the LP because we're super short-staffed. I was just talking to Tyler Harris about this a couple weeks ago. With us being as short-staffed as we are, it's so hard to have like PACs, organizations, and campaigns without having people that have to work on all three, which is illegal.
Right. the one of the interesting things about like the comings and goings of the Libertarian Party is you mentioned the classical liberal caucus, and that's something that I'm not really familiar with. I know there's a Twitter account, but I haven't like really kept up with what kind of mobilizing effort is happening among the big L libertarians. And so that's a new caucus. And there is, you alerted me to the emo caucus, and me being born in 1988, I was a full-fledged like scene kid in high school. So this is like resonating with me. So maybe I'll come back because of the emo caucus.
I would love I love hearing that. I am a big fan. They are definitely they're the only caucus. It's the emo caucus and the Waffle House caucus are the only ones that I'll ever actually represent loudly. But they're actually one of the organizations that's trying to do something besides just message something. And they're setting up like emo night, like raves and parties off location, like the night before or one of the kind of freer nights of state conventions around the country. So we're gonna be doing like super old school like emo music raves with a bunch of libertarians. And
Oh my
the goal is to also, like flyer the town and get a bunch of just people that live in wherever that is to come, and then you get to mingle and invite them to a talk tomorrow or whatever. But also to our point from earlier, just get some like just a real life experience with some of these people. Conventions are fun, but the idea of just like mosh pitting with someone is so much different than sitting next to them at a lecture.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that kind of stuff.
I'll have to get my As Cities Burn t-shirt out of the closet.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that I am excited about the like big L, you said like the mobilization of the big L libertarians, I think is how you worded it. Is that there's a lot more reaching out to like mainstream artists of different varieties, or maybe not even mainstream, but just like artists, and trying to do things that have like a lot of comedy at it or a lot of music or something like that, where we can actually kind of tap into these pieces of culture that libertarian ideals have been a big part of since their beginning, whether that's punk and emo music or comedy or rock or so many of these other things that are just like pretty libertarian at their core, and actually being able to tap into that and bring that energy into votes is something that I think the LP just hasn't done almost at all in 50 years. And we're finally starting to like kind of tap into that a little bit better, and it's kind of fun.
I don't know if we've talked about this before, but like in my life in the last couple years, I've taken a huge spiritual turn. And I find it really interesting, like being part of the libertarian subculture. It's kind of cool to like just know how subcultures operate. So there's like thought leaders, and then the main people who are like the spokespersons and such. And I like have been really interested in all kinds of forms of spirituality, but I noticed like it's very much a kind of subculture in the way like the liberty movement is. And so I've been kind of diving into, when I said earlier how I'm not following what is going on with the Libertarian Party. Well, I'm following new thought leaders now that are different, and they have something else to say, and it's not electoral politics. And that's kind of what is driving me right now.
Who are some of those thought leaders? I'm curious.
Like Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, Ram Dass. I love let's see, some like, and then in the psychology space there is Scott Barry Kaufman. So like I've kind of taken some like interest in just trying to explore other facets of what I call personal freedom. So like Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements, it's a hand guide book to personal freedom. And so I've been exploring this space for quite a while now. I was like, how do I have maximum freedom for myself, for others, but it's a different like kind of freedom, like a mental physical freedom. So that's kind of been really where I'm really digging this aspect, and it's less politics, more like peace.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I'm also a big Ram Dass fan. And there's a couple of other names that you mentioned there that have been the soundtrack to a few trips, and some very good insights. I think when I first kind of started touching into that like spirituality side of things, my biggest issue was like, I didn't want to be all the way over here where I was in like, gotta do things, gotta vote, gotta all the things. But I also didn't want to like completely like Ram Dass specifically is like a little too far in the other direction for me personally, of like, I couldn't live like that. Like, I know that I can't actually like fully check out and just be like, whatever happens, happens, and it doesn't matter. Like, I have way too much like main character syndrome and plenty of other things that I just know I'll never make it there. And I don't even know that I necessarily want to. I do still kind of want to, change some things and do some things. I still care about political issues. So I found, like a few years ago, I found Terrence McKenna, who I think is like my favorite like middle ground of that, where he's still like talked about a lot of political issues, and like him and Alan Watts are both great, but they're both dead, unfortunately. So I've spent the last like 6 months, and part of my goal for 24 is to like identify more living people who are closer to that. And I think like Graham Hancock is close, like Duncan Trussell. How am I spacing on like the absolute main one that was in my head when I started that? Russell Brand, there we go, are like somewhere around there, but I'm trying to I know that there's so many more people in that space that I just have no idea who they are, and so I'm like actively searching for more people to listen to in that area right now, and it's been kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I got interested in spirituality, it opened up a whole new world of influencers to like follow. And Gabrielle Bernstein is one that really speaks to me. She's all about like manifestation. And so I really dig what she talks about, and very curious about like, this entrepreneurial life that I want to live. Well, I'm trying to manifest it. I have like a vision board that has cows and chickens and like the dog boarding business on it.
I love it.
Yeah, and then this is kind of cringe, but the place where our vision board is located is right in the bathroom. So anytime you use the toilet, it's in line of sight. So I just figured, hey, like you're going to the bathroom multiple times a day, so you're going to see it. And why not, just get to experience the vision board multiple times a day. So that's like my little tip for trying to manifest a life is put your vision board in the bathroom.
Put your vision board in the bathroom. That's honestly like it kills two birds with one stone, because it makes sure that you see it often and like actually looks at it. It also gives you like something other than your phone to look at, and can kind of help like detach that moment from just another like doom scrolling part of the day.
Right.
Because I've definitely too often will do that thing where it's like, I've been done for 3 minutes, I'm just still scrolling, because this is just as comfortable of a chair as
potty
any.
break is for Twitter.
Right. It's like, hey, I'm still on the clock, so we're good.
Well, here's the other component of like having your vision board in the bathroom is if you have a housing situation where your restroom is not used by guests, it is like a private place for you to like see the vision board often where nobody uses my bathroom in my master bath, just myself and my husband. So I don't have to explain to anybody what this like framed thing is with like the chickens, and then like a green card for my husband is on it since he is a United States citizen, or Canadian citizen, and we want him to get a green card. So like we manifesting the green card, like just all these kind of good things that we want for our life and our family. So that's my weird pro tip, but I hope it works for me.
Hell yeah. Well, best of luck in all of that.
Thank you.
This is not the best segue I've ever had, but a decent one. You recently decided to go an entire year without drinking, which got extended. But
Yeah.
But was that? I guess my first question is: was that part of this kind of spiritual shift, or was that just a personal kind of choice?
It's really hard to pinpoint like all these spiritual things that were happening in my life, but I did I was on this weight loss journey, and I was like, oh cool, like I've never been able to lose weight in my life. And so I was losing weight, and I'm like, well, how can I intentionally lose more weight? And I realized that cutting out alcohol was this way for me to reduce caloric intake, but still be able to keep space for things like sweets. And because I really just I've never been able to do like prohibitive diets where I'm like, I'm just not going to eat a piece of cake for 6 months. Like that's never been me. So I'm like, I can keep those indulgences, but if I take out the calories of alcohol, I could be looking at like 2,000 calories a week where I could just like reduce it if I switched to just water. And so I started a really like intense alcohol reduction lifestyle, and then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make a personal goal of like not even having a sip of alcohol for one whole year. And I was at the end of it, and then found out I was pregnant. So I was like, well, I guess I will just keep going with this alcohol free life for a while, and I will look forward to. I brought a bottle of wine to the hospital. Didn't dive into it in the hospital after delivery, but it was there. And then now I'm doing it again. So after delivery, I have had some alcohol here and there. But I am, as of like January 1, decided I'm just not going to go back to having any alcohol once again, because there is that kind of fun personal challenge element to it. And I'm really fortunate I don't have an alcohol dependency. So I realize like it can be really hard for some people to make that decision to quit with a kind of dependency. But for me, it was just like a social thing in a previous life. Come on, I'm a new mom. Like, what kind of social life do I have at the moment? But like a way to like just be like, hey, this is my indulgence, is I'm gonna have a glass of wine. And I just decided like, let me try again. And I love these little personal challenges of like, let me for 1 year not have alcohol. And the really interesting experience that has happened for me was not that I quit drinking, but the way other people took it. Like it was a fascination to so many people. Why are you drinking water? And I'm like, I'm not drinking. And so I always kind of wondered, but I didn't push people to tell me why. But they would ask, and it's like, do you think that I have an abuse issue? Do you think that I'm pregnant? Like when the thing is, it's like I just want to be healthier, and I want to try to like live to 100 years old. And so like that's one of the little things that a person can do. Like nobody needs alcohol. Like maybe to pour on a wound if you've got an infection and don't have anything else, but not a single person needs it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that I could go an entire year. but it's definitely I can say thankfully that I also don't have like an actual dependency on alcohol. I think I have a dependency on not raw dogging reality. So
Sure, like most people do.
if I'm not smoking, like if I run out of weed, it is an almost 100%. If I run out of weed but I have alcohol in the house, I'm going to get drunk, because the idea of just like laying down in bed sober and going to sleep just doesn't really work that well unless I have like an actually like physically demanding day, which working from home at a desk job is not a physically demanding day very often. And so like I have that issue, but as far as like just alcohol by itself, I could give it up. I just don't know that I don't think that I would ever be able to stick with it for an entire year just because of that like social aspect of it. But it is definitely, I used to drink a lot and now I drink, once every other month maybe. And it is a huge health difference for sure. And even just like stomach wise, like a hangover 3 days a week is not a good, fun way to live life.
No. No, definitely not. My hangover food used to be Jimmy John's. And it's nice because if you live by Jimmy John's, they can deliver it to you.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds really good right now, actually.
So yeah, I think that's where the spirituality component comes in, with like that, like peace begins with me and like finding peace within. And so it's like I've been doing some things to try to explore this more. I took Reiki classes, so I'm certified in being able to be a Reiki practitioner, although I don't really enjoy it. But I thought the classes were really cool and discovering it. And then I've also done some really interesting, like avant-garde kinds of things, like a past life regression to see if I could come up with like past lives. And that was a really interesting experience. So I'm really just exploring like unique things that my mind was not open to at one point in time, where now I'm curious.
I love that. I'm excited to continue to talk to you through this, because I feel like I'm in a very similarly like just open-minded, like, come on world, what you got for me this year? Like,
yeah,
I am like something that I've off and on kind of been a little bit of a nerd about, but never gone deep, was like ancient history stuff.
fun.
And like lost civilizations and that kind of stuff. Something
No way.
I was like a super nerd on in like middle school, back before they found Göbekli Tepe or like most of the cool things that they found. It was like way before, when they had like a completely different timetable for humanity. But I'm like 3/4 of the way through a Graham Hancock episode of Joe Rogan, and this isn't the first thing I've listened to of his, or even on the topic in the last couple of weeks, and it's just like completely reinvigorated my like curiosity and obsession with like the idea of technology that used to exist that we don't know about, and medicine that used to exist that we don't know about, and all of this stuff. I'm like so jazzed up for that kind of stuff, which I feel like, I don't know, in my mind currently there isn't much of a difference between like spirituality and history and science and like sociology. It's like all kind of melding in my head at the moment, of just like, I think that every religion or faith or whatever was based in something true and good, and that like just kind of I'm enjoying finding all the like similarities between them all, and how far back some of them go, and some like traditions that still make sense now. And there's just so much crossover between like Buddhism and Judaism that no one talks about, and there's just so much fun stuff in that. I don't know. That's kind of I was really kind of into it last year, but just got really busy and didn't really do any kind of like soul searching or anything. And now that's part of part of my main goal for 24 is like find new people to teach me new things about all of these topics, because I am back to being just completely open-minded and curious.
I had a really interesting experience with the past life regression class, and it was in listening to what other people experienced was really intriguing to me. There was a man that he had this very vivid, detailed account of what he experienced, and he talked about a past life came to him, and it's basically like the teacher like talks you into a meditative kind of state where like I could clearly understand all of my thoughts. I had like thoughts that were like checking in the moment, being like, am I doing this right? Like I knew where I was the whole time. So it's like somewhat of a hypnosis meditative state. And this man detailed like an ancient civilization where they went underground to avoid an asteroid, and they created this whole like society underground to survive this X period of time. And I was like, wow, that's very detailed and like interesting. And he knew what time frame it was and where it was in the world. And I was scrolling on Facebook like a week later, and I saw an article about like something like this that happened. And I'm like, this is really interesting. Like,
Whoa.
I mean, I'm kind of new to the idea of the possibility of like our souls never die and that we come back.
Mm-hmm.
I've been reading some books. I read a book called Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss that documents a Yale psychiatrist that had clients that he put into a hypnotic state, and they had past lives come up. And so the accounts of him, and I'm reading another one of his books right now called Only Love is Real. And so like I just was really fascinated by this idea. And I'm not saying like I'm a complete believer. Like my experience with me trying to like recall a past life was not like super intense. Like what came to me was I was an old man in a cabin, very just generic. But and so I'm not certain if this is what I placed in my brain to like for me to just pop up, and it could be very convenient that I was an old man in a cabin. Like it was I don't know. I'm not like I don't have clear thoughts one way or the other of like did I recall a past life?
Mm-hmm.
But hearing that man talk about what he experienced was very fascinating, and it was like kind of very like interesting. Like he didn't have specific details other than when, and like he knew that he was a leader in his community. But seeing that Facebook like article pop up, I was like, that sounds exactly like what he was detailing.
That is kind of insane. I think personally one of the things that confuses and excites me the most, and I don't know, the kind of a loose train of thought, but off of what you were saying about maybe that was something that you kind of placed in your head, is like the entire concept of the placebo effect.
Yeah.
Because it goes both ways in a way where it can kind of discredit a lot of stuff and be like, oh well, you're just kind of like making that up in your head. But also it works and defies most of science to be like you can actually see things or feel things or heal from things just because your brain thinks you took that medicine. There's like it discredits everything. It just makes no sense to me, like the entire concept. And I'm curious if there's a way to like really figure that out instead of studying the actual medicine. Just study like what exactly your brain needs to think that it took the medicine, and then we could just have the cure for everything in a tic tac.
So along my spirituality journey and my influencers, there's a lady named Louise Hay, and she has a book called like Heal Your Life or something like that. And she has identified the emotional cause for diseases. So if someone has X disease, she has just like one sentence as to what kind of mental condition is going on that's causing it. So like I have been going through a health journey, and one of the illnesses that I have um been trying to recover from is something that she says is stress induced. And it just so happens that I fell ill in 2021. And in the year 2020, I was on the campaign trail for a presidential campaign, skipping nights of sleep for work, many nights, never like 2 nights in a row, but like maybe once a week, I didn't go to bed for work's sake. And so it was like, no wonder I became sick. The amount of stress that I endured trying to get a libertarian to be elected as president of the United States was so significant that I may have become ill from it. So I find that book really, really interesting when someone has some kind of illness. I personally do not want to tell someone like, I know the mental cause for why you're sick. Like, I feel like that's just a barrier that is not okay for me to share. But I am really curious when someone says like I have X illness. I go to this Louise Hay book and I look up what she says could be the possible reason for what's going on mentally that is causing the illness. And I'm like, oh shoot, like I see that. Like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Is weird. Whenever I start to feel off, I was just having like a fairly in-depth, almost argument with one of my friends about this because we're just two drastically different people on this. But whenever I start to feel off, I go like absolute bottom of the totem pole of like what could possibly be wrong. First, it's like,
okay,
have I had enough water yet today? Is like the first thing that I think about, whether
Sure.
it's stomach, head, arms, whatever's hurting. It's like, am I dehydrated? Is always my instant go-to. It's like, it's just hydration. Let me drink a glass of water. I'll be fine. If you drink 2 glasses of water and then I'm not okay, it's like either like, did I eat well? Did I get enough sleep? It's always like it's always the bottom. It's just like something simple that's wrong with me that's like easily fixable, and if I just give my body what it needs, it'll be fine. Whereas my friend is very like, my stomach hurts, it's colon cancer or something, like but what you're talking about is kind of interesting there, because I've definitely found that a lot of times some of the issues can very quickly be solved by like yoga, even if that doesn't make logical sense, that it would help like like a stomach issue or something like that, but it sometimes does, and especially like a headache or something like that. Obviously like a nap is always a great idea, but I've started adding less like physical and more kind of mental steps to that, like those first couple of things of like, is this an easily solvable problem? Do I have a headache just because I haven't had coffee yet today? Is that all it is? If it's not just that, then I'll like go for a walk. Is like did I get enough sunlight yet today is a really big one. But that's also kind of goes into the kind of mental thing of, a lot of times I'll leave my phone at home when I do that walk, because it's like, keep your neck up, keep your eyes away from the screen, all of the things kind of all together, getting sunlight all at the same time. And 9 times out of 10 I come home without a headache from a nice little 10-minute walk, whether it's the calming down or the getting away from the phone or the posture or the fresh air or whatever it is. Something about that actually works significantly more often than taking like an ibuprofen does.
Yeah, Yeah, like humans were meant to be nomadic and like walk a lot of our day, and we've become so sedentary.
Mm-hmm. That's what I miss about living in New York. I used to walk between like 7 to 12 miles a day when I lived in New York. And that was just normal, average, just like what what my body was used to, and that was great. And I was basically in like peak physical condition then, and then I got a desk job again.
There's been some things that have been coming up in my mind, like about how humans have evolved. So, like on the Clubhouse app, something that's happened for me is I often fall asleep in Clubhouse rooms. Now, this was back in the day when Clubhouse was more active, but the sounds of people talking is so soothing to me and makes me feel like going to sleep. And I was like, why does this happen to me all the time? And I thought about that. Maybe there's that correlation with caveman days where we used to live in like caves, and you would go to sleep and people would be talking around a fire or having conversations, and it was just part of life. And when I was in labor giving birth, for a little while, I finally I told everybody and all the nurses, I was like, can you all just like talk to each other and stop paying attention to me for a little while? Because I think that's what I need right now. I just want to hear people having conversations.
That's an interesting like correlation back to the campfire thing. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I also I cannot sleep in silence at all, and that's been a thing since I was a kid. I used to live by like a really major road, and so it was just like tractor trailers driving up and down all night and cars honking, and still we lived in the middle of nowhere, but it was still like plenty of noise out there. But now that I live in quiet places, I cannot sleep in quiet, and even just music doesn't really do it for me. Most of the time I fall asleep either also to like Clubhouse or like a podcast or something like that. It's the people's voice. Yeah. That's an interesting, would make a lot of sense, because that's how you knew that you were safe, is if there's other healthy people up and about talking. If all of a sudden it's quiet, that meant that the bear got them, or that they at least had to go fight the bear and they might not come back.
There was something I learned in the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, and they had a timeline of the history of humans. And I learned that about 10,000 years ago, humans started farming. I was like, wow, that's not really that long ago, considering how essential farming is to human longevity. And there was another number that was there that said about 100,000 years ago, humans started communicating. And I looked at the time difference between 100,000 years and 10,000 years. We have been having communication far longer than we have been farming. And so it just shows how important the bonds between people and storytelling and talking to one another and sharing our lived experiences is integral to humans. And so that kind of was one of these aha moments for me of how humans have really those stories that are passed down over time, family tradition. It's integral. Stories like that can teach you how to survive or teach you what to do when you're lost, is to lean on a story.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's really interesting. Like I said, I'm just recently kind of getting back into some of that stuff of what we were doing way back when. And it's interesting to hear, Graham Hancock is someone who's not what his timeline doesn't match up with what a museum would say. And there's this whole arguments over, how old various things are and where a lot of those dates fall. And I never even thought about that as like some like argued about stuff. I just always, in my mind, history for so long, history is just history, and like that's the one factual thing. And like science is about figuring things out. History is about just learning facts. And obviously, as I've gotten older, you realize like the victors write history, and a lot of your history textbooks are wrong about a lot of stuff. But what's fascinating to me now is just how much history just got completely wiped out. We don't know what was going on 30,000 years ago. They might have been extremely advanced beyond what we are now, or they might have been still just hunter-gatherers who hadn't figured out how to farm yet. And there's a whole big, like, kind of, we don't know, which is, I don't know. It's just kind of crazy to me that there's still just this giant question mark on what was going on that's almost unanswerable. We're finding these civilizations. We don't know what they're called. We're assigning names to people groups that we've never known existed, and just kind of like trying our best at guesswork of figuring out this kind of stuff. And it's very interesting to me. But I think you make a very good point there of just the no matter how you draw the timeline or which civilization you're looking at, it's the language structure, the way that they're able to communicate with each other and the people around them, and like pass on just anything, like from just facts on how to do things, what to hunt, where to hunt, how to build a fight, like all of that stuff. It's every time it happens, it's just kind of a snowball effect of facts that everyone's kids are a little bit better off than they were, and we can do better and crazier things as long as natural disasters or nuclear war don't happen. Hopefully. But yeah, I don't know. It's that part's definitely one of the blacker pills for me, is like how much more time do we have to really make all this count. But I like to think that we've got at least enough time to where we don't have to see it, whatever happens. I'm hoping.
Oh, to circle back to like the libertarian movement and people who have made a effort to distance themselves from the Libertarian Party, I think something new is coming up for me in the last few years, and that is this, like I mentioned, personal freedom, but there's very much a social media algorithm targeted to me of like millennial farmers and living like a homesteading kind of lifestyle, providing your own food, making your own food, living more off of the earth. I don't know if I am about to become someone who gets rid of my tether to Jeff Bezos and brown packages that show up at my door, but I have this idea of that's who I want to be. And it seems very much like this is an ideal that my generation is buying into, and we may not be there yet. We don't know how to get there. But I'm seeing it on social media and it's palatable to me. I'm considering like, how can I buy a few acres of land and like have that dog boarding facility that I mentioned, so that way people can drop off their dogs and I can watch them, and that can provide for me and my family. So I'm curious about your thoughts as your POV, since you're a little younger than me, you're a different gender than me. Are you also seeing the liberty movement turn into a more agrarian family values type of movement from where I thought it was, which was getting libertarians elected?
I don't know from my point of view if it's a strong trajectory within the movement. I think that it's kind of been happening for a few generations where people come into the LP, get burnt out, and then they go that way. And I know plenty of like Gen Xers that are a couple years ahead of us on that curve. Like Rex Longhorn is a good example. He stayed active with the LP for a while, but he's got acres on the mountainside and doing his whole thing. Is a former chair of Oklahoma LP.
Yeah. A gubernatorial candidate.
Also that. But yeah, I'm definitely noticing outside of the movement, people who have never actually given a fuck about politics in any way, shape, or form, doing this kind of stuff. The people who have just, who are doing it either for the health reasons or for the financial reasons or the family, bringing the nuclear family closer together type reasons. And it's not about like, severing the bloodlines to Bezos and the military industrial complex or anything like that. It's just about like, if I keep eating out and buying groceries at the store, I'm going to kill my children. And so I'd rather, make bread from home and, make things from scratch and, figure out life and, own our own chickens instead of these super pumped full of hormone eggs that you get at the store, all this stuff. I think you said earlier, like crunchy granola, I think a lot of people were crunchy granola like Whole Foods shoppers and have kind of upped their game in the last 5 years, especially post-COVID, where they're like, it's not Whole Foods, it's home foods. Like, it's, they've gone that extra step. And I don't know, I'm super excited to see it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I even want to grow mushrooms in my home, like lion's mane mushrooms, like
no, those aren't as fun.
not as much the fun ones, but like just the ones to eat. To be able to grow mushrooms at home, a wonderful source of nutrition, and anybody can do that. So like, what if there was a movement of people that like shared how to make your own food no matter what climate you live in your home? So I'm trying to get my husband to get on board with growing mushies in our house so we can have our own little bin of whatever they are.
Hell yeah.
Oyster mushrooms.
I'm a fan of all of the obviously the fun ones too, but I'm a big mushroom guy just in my cooking. And there's also a bunch of them that have just like ridiculous health benefits and other things like that. It's a really like underutilized area of food, in my opinion. One of the things that I find really exciting on this topic is the kind of idea of like high-tech homesteading and just the crazy shit that we can do now that was never actually an option. Like for a Gen Xer in their early 20s to say, I'm going to live off the grid someday, which is like a life goal of my dad's. That was a thing you had to really like build towards and spend years on the grid and work up a savings to do all of this crazy shit, where now there are so many ways to at least like step by step, you don't have to go all the way off the grid completely anymore. You can kind of be half in, half out, and you can put solar panels up but not disconnect from the gas line. And you can there's a lot of really intricate ways that you can grow food inside now and stuff like that. Like there's a lot more opportunities to do these kinds of things with some of the technology and the information that we have now, that past generations, it was way more of an all or nothing. This is going to be your entire life's dedication, is just like making it work. And I was homeschooled growing up. So like I have friends that I grew up with that are like both parents were stay-at-home parents, and they lived on like a small farm, and they were the libertarian ideal family, but it was an entire livelihood of just like keeping their family alive, where now we kind of you can have a day job and be a homesteader at the same time, which is neat.
And there's like another path that I think I'm interested in exploring more, which is leaving the United States and living someplace else. And like, hey, let's keep eyes on Argentina and see how Javier's Argentina plays out. Like, that might be an option. So I really like warm climates. I love tropical climates. I love being by water. And I'm not really finding a place in the United States that is attainable for me right now. Like, the Gulf Coast of Florida, a beautiful, wonderful place that I lived for 8 years. The cost to acquire what I once had a decade ago is 4 times the amount. So it's like I can't really get back what I once had just a decade ago, but living in another country is a possibility. So perhaps like that's another path forward for liberty lovers, is to just say, you know, maybe the United States is a good place to grow up and get some experience, but like, you know, there's a better way of life in other places. I went to Costa Rica and I fell in love with it. The people, the Ticos that I met in Costa Rica, just beautiful, friendly people that love God and the earth. And like there was no trash or litter anywhere because the people there care so much about the beautiful land that their creator made for them that they take care of it. And I found that beautiful when I come to the United States and there's litter everywhere. It's like people are treating the earth like trash. And our government is too.
True that. Yeah, that's definitely something that I've been thinking about a lot more in the last few years than I ever really considered, because like I don't, something I said for a while, I don't know if I still believe it, but I don't know that there's going to be a 2024 election. You know what I mean? Like we're getting close enough to where I don't know if there's anything that'll pop off now, but like in 2021, that's something that I said often, and I'll say it now about 28. Like, you know, there's a solid chance that we go to shit long before we have time to, you know, get a libertarian elected president here. So yeah, I think maybe we either go somewhere that there's already a libertarian elected or a fairly liberty leaning government, or somewhere where there's just a very lenient government in general, like a Mexico, where we could kind of we could do a free state project in Mexico and have the Mexican government just leave us alone for the most part, with as many guns and training as we have within the movement. We would basically operate as a cartel, and they would give us the same kind of clearance that they give the cartel. So yeah, I think one of those two kind of trajectories is definitely something to keep an eye out for, because yeah, I don't know how much longer we have left.
Well, my husband's job may be sending him to Argentina for an extended period of time, so I could be potentially moving to Argentina for a few months, so I can come back on the show and report what life is like in Argentina.
That would be awesome. Definitely, that's really exciting. That's super cool. Congrats.
Yeah. Thanks.
So before we wrap up, tell people one more time why they should come to LibertyCon, and then where they can find you and keep up on all of your adventures and travels and your amazing life.
The reason to come to LibertyCon is to be in the know of what's going on with the Liberty Movement, learn something new, and contribute to where the Liberty Movement is going. The movement goes to those who show up. So if you feel like showing up, the place to do it is register at libertycon.org. And make sure to do that before the ticket prices go up. Use David's code of SFM to save a few dollars. Make sure to get your hotel or other accommodations booked. And we'll see you in Washington, D.C. at the Grand Hyatt, February 2nd to 4th. John Stossel will be there. Perhaps maybe my future president, Javier, might be a speaker if he takes SFL up on their invitation to have him be a speaker. John Mackey is going to be one of the featured speakers. Former Congressman Justin Amash, former presidential candidate and my former boss, Dr. Jo Jorgensen, her running mate, Spike Cohen, and so many other people will be there. So if you want to get a chance to meet, if you don't already know, some of these influencers, you can actually meet them in person and maybe have them sign something for you or have a conversation and pick their brain about the question that you always wanted them to answer. There is a awards banquet on Saturday night that will be a kind of like a semi-formal event. So come for the party, come for the food, come for the speakers, and the main thing is just come for the people.
Hell yeah. Well, you heard the lady. Go click the link in the description to go sign up for LibertyCon February 2nd through the 4th in DC. Promo code FSM to get that 25% off your ticket. Hang out with Jess and Spike and Amash and all these other awesome people. But before you do that, make sure you go and give this video a quick like. And if you haven't already, follow the channel to stay updated on all the great upcoming shows. Like next week, we have Canadian comedian Tyler Morrison coming on to talk about his latest tour and his special that just came out a few weeks ago. Followed by my dad, Spike Cohen, another great LibertyCon guest who is going to be talking about his work at the hatchery in his hometown, as well as with You Are the Power, its work over the last year. So definitely come on back, check that out. Jess, thank you so much for coming back on. This was a blast, as always.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
And fighters, thank you so much for watching. We will catch you back here next week. Until then, keep up the fight.